I-62 by the Committee on Budget and Fiscal Review, an act relating to greenhouse gases, making appropriation therefore to take effect immediately, bill related to the budget.
Ms. Skinner.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. The 862 represents the trailer bill that provides us the very first appropriation of auction revenues from our cap and trade program as we implement California's historic and groundbreaking Global Warming Solutions Act, AB 32. It continuously appropriates 60% of the cap and trade funding starting next year under these categories. 35% will go to transit, affordable housing, and sustainable communities. And within that transit package, 15% will go directly to our local transit agencies. High-speed rail. 25% of this allocation will be continuously appropriated for high-speed rail. And as I mentioned in my opening remarks, this is an investment for the future that I believe Californians and people across the country and across the world will look back at and find the hesitation hard to comprehend. Every major economy in the world has a high-speed rail system. California, with its record of groundbreaking infrastructure and transportation improvements across the country, should be rightfully the first U.S. state to have high-speed rail. I want the members to reflect for a moment on some investments that our federal government made during the height of the Depression that we rely on each and every day here in California and for which we can't imagine being able to survive. LAX and the Long Beach Airport, two recipients of funding during the Depression, our Hetch Hetchy water system, the Port of Oakland, many, many more essential projects throughout California received investments like we are making today for high-speed rail. Let me go on to some of the other highlights of the cap and trade expenditures. It addresses the concerns of our increased oil by rail imports by including an oil spill response cleanup. And it enables that 40% of the funds in our cap and trade auction revenues are available in the years to come for flexible appropriation dependent on the priorities that the legislature determines for things like low-carbon transportation, urban forestry, and other natural resources programs. The bill includes tough reporting and accountability measures to ensure that all of the funds result in a reduction of greenhouse gases and have a strong nexus to the program. Thank you.
Mr. Gurel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, there are a number of objectionable components to this measure that I have to bring to your attention. The first is that this portion of the trailer bill, this portion of the budget, completely ignores the LAO's concerns and our concerns that the appropriation of this money from cap and trade is probably not only an inappropriate appropriation, but is probably an unconstitutional appropriation. Specifically, this pulls billions of dollars out, and those billions of dollars are not returned to ratepayers. They are not returned to the economy. And in fact, they're returned to projects that in total meet only 1.4% of our state's emissions goal. They barely put a dent in the emissions reduction goals this state has set as a priority. And then there's high-speed rail. High-speed rail has suffered already multiple mortal blows. And it almost feels like at this point that high-speed rail has become the Black Knight that Arthur came across in the forest in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. The first mortal blow against high-speed rail was that the courts have brought to our attention that it no longer resembles what voters approved in 2009 when they approved a high-speed rail. And it no longer has even remotely the close to the same budget that it had when it was presented to voters in 2009. The second mortal blow to high-speed rail thus far has been the support in California among this project. the polls tell us what we already know, and that is that the support for high-speed rail has completely fallen apart. The third mortal blow to high-speed rail has been that this last week, the House of Representatives in bipartisan action, has moved to defund high-speed rail. And that was a thoughtful act to do. And last but not least, the fourth mortal blow against high-speed rail has been that private investors, seeing the lack of commitment by the federal government, the lack of commitment by the states, and the challenges in the court process, the private investors have completely run away from this project. And yet by continuing to be insistent upon appropriating state and ratepayer money toward this failed project, it seems like this legislative body and the governor is trying to stand up and say that this is merely a flesh wound. This is not. High-speed rail is dead. And as a state, we need to give up on this particular project. There are private investors out there that are willing to put up private projects with private money and move people from Northern California and Southern California other way around. That's what we need to do now. We need to take this back to the voters, allow them to unwind it, and not waste one additional dollar of taxpayer money on high-speed rail. Thank you.
Ms. Harkey.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I know there's a lot of new members on the floor, but we are continuously appropriating funds from cap and trade for high-speed rail. That means you will not see it again. It will not come through committee. It's continuously appropriated. I don't know who wants to give up their power or their ability to monitor in that fashion, but I wouldn't think any of you would. This is one area where I know TransDef, which is not on my side of the aisle, but more on the environmental side of the aisle, very much so, as a matter of fact, in Northern California, has filed a suit on this cap and trade. There's been numerous. And so I would just ask you, using cap and trade revenues for a project that is going to increase greenhouse gases, well, we can have greenhouse grasses, but we can have greenhouse gases increase for the next 30 years. Well, Tommy would like grasses, and I understand that, but we're talking about cap and trade. Cap and trade addresses greenhouse gases in AB 32, and it's meant to reduce them. So TransDef has filed a suit saying, why would you allow such a violation of AB 32 here? And I ask you one more. I've spoken for years on the high-speed rail project. Really, we need say no more. Everybody knows it's got fatal flaws. The problem is that you are continuously appropriating fees and taxes, in essence, for this project. I don't think you want to give away your authority that way. I think this could have been better negotiated. And I do request an aye vote on this part. Thank you. Or no vote. Sorry. I'm getting confused with Tommy. Thank you.
Ms. Grove.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do rise in opposition of this bill to reiterate what my colleagues have said. This applies a continuous appropriation to fund high-speed rail at 25% of all revenues that come in from cap and trade. Under cap and trade AB 32 of 2006, it says that it's to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 2020. Even if you started a high-speed rail project with the monies that's coming from cap and trade, the ROI for cap and trade emissions, because it would cost so much emissions to be emitted into the air just under the construction phase, the ROI, or return on investment for emissions, is 82 years, which means you wouldn't recap all the emissions for 82 years just based on building the project, which does not meet the AB 32 requirements. To allow a continuous appropriation means that it doesn't ever come back to this body for us to discuss again. When you look at that and you look at the AB 32 requirements, it does not meet AB 32 requirements, and it's a continuous appropriation. I would ask that you vote no on this bill, and I can tell you that just the other day, the House voted not to extend any more federal funds. There are no private investors coming out of the woodwork to invest in this project because they believe it is a boondoggle, exactly what it's been portrayed as. We spent billions so far, and there's not 1 ounce of track even laid. All consultants are being paid, and it's like we're just going to continue investing money in this project until somebody finally says it's not going to happen. But we've wasted billions of dollars in that process that could be used for water, for our farmers. You know, our Governor Jerry Brown declared a state of emergency for our water because of the drought, and this body still has failed to act on that. Our farmers still do not have 1 ounce of water to grow crops and feed this nation. And that's pretty sad. We have fallowed ground in the Central Valley. We've got trees being uprooted. So when you look at all the dollars that's going to a project that is never going to get off the ground, and it's just a payoff to the unions so that they can continue to fund their wages, it's unacceptable that this body doesn't stand up against them and stop this from happening. I ask for a no vote.
Mr. Emanuel Perez.
Thank you.
Seeing no further debate, Ms. Skinner, you may close.
Yes, I appreciate that our floor debate got into the weeds in this $250 million appropriation regarding high-speed rail, and I will remind us that this is our historic first allocation of revenues from our cap-and-trade auction, and I ask for your aye vote.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 53, noes 23. Measure passes.